Let's jump right into this explainer and reframe one of history's most famous events, the sudden, catastrophic collapse of the Roman Empire. When we hear the fall of Rome, we almost always picture this dramatic, cinematic moment of destruction, a massive, unstoppable empire just crumbling into dust overnight. But the historical reality, well, it's far more complex, it's way more gradual, and honestly, it's a whole lot more fascinating.
I want you to ask yourself something as we go through this. Does a massive empire truly fall, or does it simply transform and diverge into entirely new societies? We're going to explore how the events of late antiquity weren't necessarily an ending at all, but rather this profound political and social transformation. It literally provided the deep background for the very nations that make up modern Europe today.
Because Rome definitely didn't collapse overnight. Starting in the late 4th century, the empire formally split in two, setting the stage for two vastly different historical destinies. You had these rapid shifts happening, from a unified empire to a permanent division, followed by a massive series of migrations. Rome itself was actually on a really long decline. In fact, by 404 AD, the western capital had already been moved out of Rome entirely to the much more defensible city of Ravenna.
Section 1. Rethinking Rome's Fall. The Diverging Paths.
Moving on to Section 2. Barbarians reshape the West. The domino effect.
When we look at how the West was completely reshaped, we really have to understand the people who were crossing those borders. We're taught to think of this as a coordinated, malicious invasion of conquerors, right? But actually, these Germanic tribes were mostly terrified squatters and refugees fleeing for their lives. They were running from the legendary, relentless Hunnic cavalry. The Huns were these nomadic warriors on horseback, and their skill in battle absolutely terrified their enemies. And that terror created a massive domino effect, pushing these diverse, loosely organized tribes of men, women, and children across the Roman frontier simply because they were seeking safety.
Now take a look at this. It's a little macabre, for sure, but this skull preserves a distinct top-knot hairstyle. And this is incredible because it proves how these diverse tribes strongly asserted their unique identities even while settling in Roman lands. In ancient society, how people dressed and wore their hair was a huge deal. They didn't just assimilate and disappear into the crowd. They kept their distinct clothing, like wearing pants and putting animal fats in their hair, to clearly differentiate themselves from the tunic-wearing Romans.
But as you can imagine, things did not go smoothly for these refugees. They were pushed way beyond endurance by starving conditions, and the Roman exploitation was brutal. Corrupt officials actually forced them to trade their own children as slaves just for dog meat to survive. So understandably, groups like the Visigoths rebelled. It set off this massive chain reaction. They killed Emperor Valens at Adrianople in 378, they stunned the whole world by sacking Rome in 410, and it all culminated when a barbarian king named Odoacer deposed the final Western Roman emperor in 476 AD.
But here's the catch. These newcomers didn't actually want to destroy the Roman way of life, they wanted to enjoy it. To survive and to rule effectively, these new Germanic kings had to blend their loose, unwritten, clan-based traditions with highly structured, written Roman laws. And that led to some really fascinating innovations, like the Frankish Wehrgild. This was basically a system of fines designed to prevent bloody family vendettas. Instead of endless cycles of revenge killings, they literally put a price tag on different crimes. It was a massive cultural merger, and it laid the absolute groundwork for modern European nations.
Section 3. The East Endures. Survival of New Rome.
So while the West was physically fragmenting into all these new kingdoms, the Eastern Roman Empire, which modern historians usually call the Byzantine Empire, even though they just called themselves Romans, managed to survive for another 1,000 years. How? Well, they used their massive wealth from trade routes to simply pay off their threats. When the Huns came knocking, the East just paid them huge bribes to spare their territories, and strategically deflected those barbarian migrations westward. Their enduring strategy was basically push the problem to the west. Safe behind the incredibly heavily fortified walls of their capital, Constantinople, a multi-ethnic, Greek-speaking population continued to proudly call themselves Romans. And they were thriving. They enjoyed a booming economy, importing luxury goods like silk and pepper via the spice road. The social elite spent their money freely, and everyone, from the rich to the poor, would crowd into amphitheaters to watch these incredibly passionate, high-energy chariot races. They'd divide themselves into fiercely competitive factions, the famous Blues and the Greens.
Section 4. Justinian's Grand Ambition. The Power Couple.
Okay, let's talk about the ultimate historical power couple, Emperor Justinian and Empress Theodora. Theodora is just a wildly fascinating historical figure.
She was the daughter of a bear trainer, a former actress with a pretty scandalous past, who somehow rose to absolute power to rival anyone in wealth and influence. Together they ruled with an iron fist, brilliantly blending absolute imperial power with divine authority, keeping everything completely centralized in the capital.
And Theodora's influence on history literally cannot be overstated. During the catastrophic Nika riot, which was fueled by heavy taxes and those intense chariot racing rivalries, Constantinople was literally left in ashes. Justinian completely panicked. He was actually packing his bags and preparing to flee the city. But Theodora stood her ground and delivered this absolute powerhouse of a speech, declaring she would much rather die in her imperial purple robes than live as a fugitive. Her words totally shamed Justinian into staying. He ordered his troops into the streets, crushed the rebellion, and secured their throne.
Once his throne was secure again, Justinian went right back to chasing his grand ambition. He desperately wanted to restore Roman power, and he did manage to temporarily recapture Italy, North Africa, and parts of Spain from the barbarians. But the cost? Absolutely monumental. The grueling wars severely damaged the Western infrastructure. Italy endured death and destruction on a massive scale, and it completely emptied the Eastern treasury. In the long run, those military victories were a total disaster.
The costs were just way too high. The population was overburdened and crippled by taxes to fund these endless wars, which led to widespread banditry everywhere. And then, to make matters unimaginably worse, a horrifying epidemic spread by flea bites in the 540s wiped out roughly a third of the empire's population. We're talking 250,000 people dying in Constantinople alone. Imagine trying to run a massive empire while dealing with a collapsing economy, endless war, and a literal global pandemic all at the exact same time. It permanently weakened the empire's ability to hold on to Justinian's grand conquests.
Section 5. Preserving the Classical Legacy, the Ultimate Survivor.
Despite all the devastating wars, the plagues, and the constantly shifting borders across the centuries, both the fragmented West and the enduring East ultimately contributed to preserving something far more valuable than physical territory: classical knowledge. The survival of classical Greek and Roman literature, the plays, the histories, the philosophies, was actually saved by a massive technological shift. The ancient world moved away from unwieldy, fragile papyrus scrolls to the highly durable, bound pages of the modern codex book. The codex was just way less susceptible to damage and far more efficient, so copying texts into this new format massively increased their chances of surviving in a war-torn world. Ultimately, those old pagan classics of Greece and Rome survived for a highly practical reason. Educated Christians in the East still required a really deep knowledge of these ancient texts just to get lucrative, highly competitive government jobs. It was essential study material. Meanwhile, over in the West, scholars and monks painstakingly copied these manuscripts by hand to keep their contents alive as the old scrolls disintegrated. So, to wrap up this explainer, just look at the sheer scale of what survived. If the bloodlines of modern European society, its physical books with bound pages, its legal codes, and its systems of compensation all heavily descend from this specific era, did Rome actually fall, or did it just fundamentally transform into the foundation of the world we live in today? It's a powerful shift in perspective, and for sure it changes how we view history entirely.